Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Ahmet Soormally. I've been at Tyke for about 2.5 years. Started out life at Tyke as a consulting engineer, working with prospects, also management of existing clients, assisting them with technical evaluation, training on their digital journey, whether they're replacing an incumbent solution or whether they're looking to put an API management solution in place or have a greenfield project which they need to secure. So more recently, I moved into the product leadership team where I get to evaluate various technologies, research the market and have input into the strategic roadmap of the Tyke platform. So if you've got any interesting ideas or capabilities that you're interested in, come and see me at the stand. I've gained a relatively broad exposure to understanding the needs of startups through to enterprises across the spectrum of industry verticals. That'll be from travel and tourism to banking and government. If you like the talk and want to know more about our offering, or if you're looking for some awesome stickers, we've got, amongst the best stickers in the industry. Come to our stand. We've also got some edible Tyke cookies. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be provoking some thoughts about how you go about evaluating the cost of the technology choices that you make. So I happen to be reading a copy of The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less, by an American psychologist named Barry Schwartz when I was asked by Marcoms to prepare a talk for Nordic APIs. The book is mainly sort of consumer focused, where Schwartz sort of argues that eliminating consumer choices can really reduce anxiety for shoppers. And so whilst reading that book, I could really relate, not only on a personal level, but I was also able to sort of extend and apply what he's been saying to technology evaluation. If you get the opportunity, I highly recommend you have a read. So, October of '99, I passed my driving test. I inherited my grandfather's Alfa Romeo. He bought it new when I was born, so by the time it came to me, it was a complete rust bucket. To go with my first car, my parents bought me my mobile phone. My first mobile phone, the Nokia NK402. It was an amazing 17th collection of 17th birthday presents. It was a pay-as-you-go phone. It lived in the glove compartment of the car. It was switched off and it only came out to be recharged. Emergency phone in case the car broke down. It's fine. I wasn't going to be walking around with that brick in my pocket. Fast forward a few years, when I went to university, I treated myself to the Nokia 8210. It was brilliant. It had Snake. It was small enough for me to go to discos and fit in my pocket. It sent text messages and made phone calls. I'd drop it on the floor, it would smash to pieces, and I'd be able to put it back together again. If I dropped it in a pint of beer, I'd take it out and leave it in a cup of rice overnight, and it would dry out and I could use it again later the next day. Fast forward a few years, and I changed vendor to BlackBerry. Wow, what a difference. Some of the key features here: migration path, move my contacts to SIM card, load the SIM into BlackBerry, it works. Improved, I had the BlackBerry Messenger, I had that awesome trackpad scrolly thing, I had the full QWERTY keyboard, the internet browser, the color screen, awesome email tooling, Wi-Fi, and my only little niggle was that I lost Snake. Fast forward a few more years to Apple, and Apple brought me the App Store, the ability to download, any application, built by the community. It's absolutely awesome. Large color screen, better browsing and navigation experience, iTunes, better browser, stronger camera. But can anybody guess what I said to all of my friends after 2 days of owning this phone? I want my BlackBerry back, so very close, yes. Despite being a really, considerably more capable phone, I had no BlackBerry Messenger. My BlackBerry messages were not transferable. I have a lower battery life. The battery was not replaceable. I had a worse email experience because BlackBerry's email was I think it still is much better, personally. Still no Snake, and now I've lost my buttons as well. It was a real strange feeling of both happiness and regret. a few years later, as you can see, I kind of tend to use my phones far longer than their intended lifetime. And in that time that I owned my iPhone, I'd unknowingly acquired a bit of debt and vendor lock-in. I've been installing and using various applications which were iPhone only. I've been using iMessage, Apple TV Remote, an augmented reality Sky Guide app. I don't know if you've ever used it, it's pretty cool. And after scanning the market for far too long, it boiled down to a choice of 3 different brands. I actually wanted to try Android for various reasons, several reasons. But despite putting various Android devices into my shopping basket and then taking it out again over the course of several months, I could never actually come to complete checkout. I've got a busy life with more important things to do than choosing a phone. Owing to familiarity, compatibility, and just ease of upgrading, I just bought the latest iPhone. And despite the fact that it's a phenomenal phone, I just don't feel comfortable with the niggling feeling about the opportunity cost of the alternative foregone. What's more is that the little quirks and niggles in my new phone, they become further amplified and they prevent my enjoyment of my new phone. Why? Because of the fact that I know that I'm locked in and that I have alternative options which I feel trapped about taking. Because of this, I can't help but have those nostalgic feelings about my first Nokias and BlackBerry Bold, even though my expectations rose and the newer tech is vastly superior to the phones of the olden days. Everything was better when everything was worse. Unfortunately, in our industry, tech evaluation is not any easier. It's considerably more complex, but it feels like exactly the same thing is happening. On the front end, we went from jQuery to Ember to Angular and React and Vue. And with all the great and powerful capabilities that these new frameworks bring, we're introducing some considerable downsides and extra operational complexities. Despite having more power, we now need Babel, ECMAScript 6 to ECMAScript 5 transpilation, NPM bundlers and watchers, and then a Node.js server to go back to server-side rendering. I'm building a backend for my front end. We had CoffeeScript, then TypeScript, and now the renaissance of just writing pure JavaScript. And now I have all this power, but I'm no longer focusing on getting things done, but learning and using tooling which has nothing to do with the business logic of my application. In the backend world, the LAMP stack has steadily evolved. They're super stable, they're performant, they're secure. And what's more, for example, you might have heard of the Laravel framework for PHP. It can allow extremely rapid prototyping where a relatively complex application can be near production ready within a week just by following some sensible design patterns. And despite this, we still went from LAMP to mean to some kind of Frankenstein monster sort of polyglot because we want to do microservices. Everything just got so damn complex. And we can do all this cool stuff on the front end, but if we really think about it, jQuery and friends kind of was great. And call me naive, but the vast majority, 90% of your workloads, can actually still be achieved with jQuery. If we look at databases, we have, it's not enough to have a master-slave Postgres anymore. We've got so much choice with databases. Do we want SQL? Do we want NoSQL? We've got Redis, we've got CockroachDB, we've got Cassandra. The mantra seems to be to use the best tool for the job. But back in the day, we had DB admins who knew how to optimize, secure, and tune a database. They knew how to properly index and normalize a table. And so we're moving away from experts in the field into people who kind of know how to do little bits of everything, but are just not experts in these fields. GraphQL, an awesome new emerging technology. But if you didn't attend our workshop yesterday by Jens, one of my colleagues, go and see him. He did a talk about managing and protecting GraphQL APIs in an open world. come to our stand, speak to him, and if you're interested in adopting GraphQL, to see some of the kind of pitfalls and the considerations that you need to be thinking about. So, serverless. You use Lambda functions, which are absolutely amazing. But how do you go about debugging Aurora or SQS in your local development environment? It's kind of going against the grain of everything you've been taught to do in terms of keeping it simple. This is a kind of a slide that one of my colleagues, a kind of meme or image that one of my colleagues sent me, and I just thought I'd share it with you. We went from bare metal infrastructure and moved to virtual machines to realizing that we need lots of virtual machines. Then we thought that platform as a service would kind of solve the world's problems, and then we got Docker and realized we need containers. I think you get the idea. Now, the idea of this image is right, but I think the timeline is a little off. Here, 2020, we realize, yes, I need all the things. Now, a recent Gartner survey said that 80% of respondents who use cloud infrastructure actually run their workloads across multiple cloud providers at the same time. So I think we're already aware that we probably need to do all the things. It's not a future thing. And whilst we're getting all of these new technologies and increasing our operational complexity of our deployments, we start needing more and more flexibilities, and cloud providers have been clocking on. They've been coming to the rescue with the promise of that flexibility, agility, and financial savings. But at what cost? What if the vendor's offerings no longer meet my needs? What if the vendor makes a product change which simply doesn't work for my business? What happens if the vendor goes out of business? All will be fine as long as I integrate deeper and deeper into their product offerings and accept the fact that I'm being locked in. Some of our clients have successfully managed to switch API management providers 3 times over the course of 5 years, which I think is pretty impressive, but they've applied a certain set of rules which has enabled them to be to remain relatively agnostic. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how you can go about trying to achieve this. Have you thought about a pre-nuptial agreement? I don't know if this is a particularly British or American term, but before you go and get married to your cloud or technology vendor, you need to ensure that you're protecting your business. Include an exit plan and evaluate your potential risks and costs of changing when you sign up when you go and procure that piece of technology. Prefer open solutions. Open solutions allow your applications to be both flexible and loosely coupled. It's not always possible, and sometimes it's a little bit unrealistic, but if you're going to go down the proprietary technology route, then at least try and ensure that it's not on your critical path. And account for this debt as a strategic debt, which at some point will need to be repaid. In the case of my field of API management, all the latest and greatest of capabilities which gives the API management vendor a competitive advantage are not necessarily common across other vendors' solutions. And if you rely on open standards, you can switch more easily because there's more tooling, and it keeps you in control. It's a lot harder to unpick. For you architects out there, in your next project, try to think about solving your business problem using open standards. Prefer cloud-native technologies. Over the years that this technology has sort of emerged, what does cloud-native mean to me? It allows me to develop applications as a microservice or monolith if I really want to. There's nothing wrong with monoliths, and package it as a container. It allows me to install on any cloud provider's elastic infrastructure or bare metal server if I really wanted to. And it allows me to deploy using DevOps processes such as CI/CD pipelines. Service mess. With great power comes great responsibility. And this new fancy containerization allows me to form complex microservice constellations. And now I just increase complexity levels by orders of magnitude. I now need orchestration, distributed tracing, and Istio. Okay, is this what I really want to be doing? Evolution versus lift and shift. I've got lots of services in place that have been accumulated over time, which are critical to the business. I've kind of renamed it. I mean, I wanted to use the word legacy, but legacy's got very bad connotations, but they're just services that have just evolved over time. And migrating to Kubernetes is expensive. I can start by containering my applications and then slowly moving them, migrating them into Kubernetes. And I think I need service mesh, but what am I missing? If migrating to new technologies, do it slowly, gain experience and understanding before putting all of your eggs in one basket. I've seen an etcd cluster crash, and it's not fun. Bleeding edge technologies. Using bleeding edge technologies carries a lot of risk. It allows you to gain that competitive advantage if implemented correctly. So there is that chance of massive gains. But don't forget that 90% of your requirements can almost certainly be achieved using tried and tested methods. When your developers come to you telling you that they want to write GraphQL services, sorry if this aggravates you, and I'm not saying don't use it, but consider what's currently cool might just be a CV enrichment exercise. So by all means, don't disregard emerging technologies, but look at trends and keep abreast. Don't commit unless necessary. Facebook used PHP for many years, and I'm sure that they still have PHP in their stack. Google created Kubernetes in order to solve a problem, and Netflix has a blog post where you can read their blog posts and replicate what you see. But what you can't see is the business processes that they put in place behind installing all of these technologies. So just remember, by installing Istio, you're not becoming Google. Perform an annual audit and review any technology you've procured in your stack. Do you still need it? How is your customer support? Is it still performing to your expectations? So I've told you a bit about my phone debacle, and as technologists and architects, we all have to make decisions every day, not just one, but hundreds. And we need to effectively weigh up the pros and cons of all the decisions we make. Unlike a phone choice, the decisions we make can make or break a business. And if there's anything you're going to remember from today, I'd like it to be that nothing comes for free. Remember Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It's always easy to see, quantify, and reason about the positive side of the seesaw. And the trade-off is not always easy to quantify and achieve balance. But don't forget to evaluate the real cost of acquiring that new capability and ensure that you keep track of any debt you incur, because it will inevitably need to be repaid. So thank you very much for listening, and come and see my colleague Yara pop to our stand for some awesome stickers and cookies. Thank you.